Have you ever wondered why ordinary people sometimes do unimaginable things? This haunting question lies at the heart of our journey today. We're diving into the psychology of good and evil through the lens of Philip Zimbardo's The Lucifer Effect, a book that asks, what turns good people evil? Named after Lucifer, the once favored angel who fell from grace and became Satan, Zimbardo's work explores how environmental forces and hidden facets of human nature can transform anyone. The purpose of this video is an introspective exploration of human nature, morality, and self-awareness. By the end, we hope to understand ourselves a little better and recognize that the line between hero and villain runs through every human heart. Each of us carries a hidden side, a shadow self, as Carl Jung described it. Jung's theory of the shadow is that we all have dark aspects of our personality, impulses, and traits we reject or repress. These are parts of us we might not even consciously know, yet under the right conditions, they can surface. Jung warned that if our conscious mind is ever shocked, confused, or paralyzed, the shadow can overwhelm us and take control of our actions. In other words, everyone harbors the capacity for behaviors we would consider evil or immoral, lurking just beneath the persona we show the world. Philip Zimbardo echoes this idea. In The Lucifer Effect, he argues that given certain circumstances, even good people can turn cruel. It's a chilling notion that the potential for evil exists within all of us, not just in monsters out there. The psychologist Carl Jung would agree. He believed we must face our own darkness rather than pretend it isn't there. As Jung put it, a man who is possessed by his shadow falls into his own traps, living below his own level, suggesting that unacknowledged darkness can make us act far beneath our ideals. This raises a powerful question. Are we fully aware of what we're capable of? The Stoic philosopher Seneca might say we often are not. He observed that if you've never faced adversity, no one can ever know what you are capable of, not even you. We like to think of ourselves as good people, but how can we be sure until our values are truly tested? It's a discomforting thought that perhaps we don't completely know our own character. Yet acknowledging this uncertainty is part of genuine self-awareness. It humbles us and prepares us for the introspection to come. To understand how ordinary people can descend into cruelty, we turn to one of psychology's most infamous studies, the Stanford Prison Experiment, 1971. Zimbardo orchestrated a simulated prison, randomly assigning 24 average college students to be either guards or prisoners. The results were startling and disturbing. Within days, those assigned as guards, normal young men, began harassing and dehumanizing their prisoner peers. Prisoners broke down emotionally under the abuse. The situation spiraled so out of control that the 2-week experiment had to be aborted after only 6 days. Remember, these were not actual criminals or trained sadists. They were ordinary people who knew this was only a role play. Yet the power of the role and the prison-like environment was enough to draw out truly vicious behavior. One guard, who had been especially cruel, later reflected in shock, "I really thought I was incapable of this kind of behavior." Zimbardo concluded that it wasn't personal hatred or evil intent driving these acts. It was the power of the situation. He famously argued that when people do bad things, we shouldn't just blame a few bad apples. We must also consider the bad barrel, the corrupting environment, and the bad barrel makers, the systems that create such situations. In the Stanford experiment, the roles and rules of the simulated prison became a bad barrel. The guards were given power with almost no oversight, and as Zimbardo notes, giving people power without oversight is a prescription for abuse. It's unsettling how easily decent people can turn dark under situational pressures. The experiment's outcomes were so stark that when Zimbardo saw reports of abuses by US guards at Abu Ghraib prison in 2003, he immediately recognized the pattern. Once again, ordinary people in extraordinary situations had become perpetrators of humiliation and torture. At this point, it's natural to feel disturbed and perhaps a bit defensive. Surely, we tell ourselves, I would never behave that way. This is where philosophy offers a sobering reminder. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, advised, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In the context of the Stanford prison experiment, his words ring loud. We cannot always control the roles we're thrust into or the environment around us, but we can strive to control how we respond in our own mind. The guards in the experiment surrendered that inner power to the external situation. They let outside events dictate their behavior, forgetting their personal values. Stoicism teaches that we must guard the autonomy of our mind, the only thing truly under our control. As Marcus put it, if you master your mind, outside events need not make you their slave. This contrast sets up a critical reflection for us. If we were in that same situation, would we really do better? Are we confident that our moral compass would hold steady against such overwhelming social pressure? Zimbardo's experiment forces us to consider that question honestly, without ego. How strong is your moral compass when no one is watching? When there's no accountability and circumstances push you toward cruelty or indifference, what do you do? It's a question well worth pondering as we continue. Zimbardo's central argument in The Lucifer Effect is a psychological tug-of-war between situational power and individual morality. On one side, his research shows that situations can override personal ethics, turning our moral principles to dust under the right conditions. We see this not only in the Stanford prison experiment, but in countless real-world tragedies: genocide, corporate corruption, bullying, ordinary folks getting swept up in extraordinary evil because everyone's doing it, or the system made it easy. It's the uncomfortable truth that context can corrupt. Put a good person in a toxic environment, and the environment often wins out. And yet, history and human experience also offer inspiring counterpoints, individuals who maintain their integrity and compassion even in hellish conditions. Psychologist Viktor Frankl, who survived Nazi concentration camps, observed that even when stripped of everything, people could choose their attitude. "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing," Frankl wrote, "the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." In the camps where cruelty and despair were the norm, Frankl witnessed some prisoners rise above the situational evil. We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. These few souls, he said, proved that even when facing starvation and death, one thing remained under their control: the freedom to do good, to stay human. Such people clung to personal meaning and virtue when every external force encouraged them to abandon both. This duality, Zimbardo's findings versus Frankl's insights, is a profound lesson. Yes, situations exert powerful influence, but we are not absolute puppets of our environment. There is a part of us that can resist if we nurture it. The question is, how do we cultivate that resilience? Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, famous for his work on flow states, would likely answer, by developing mastery over our own consciousness. He argued that we can free ourselves from the threats of the outside world to the extent that we influence what happens in our minds. In other words, when we train our focus, values, and awareness, we become less vulnerable to the push and pull of circumstance. We become like a rooted tree in a storm. The winds rage, but we bend rather than break because our roots are deep. So think about it personally. Who are you when no one else is around? When there's no law, no audience, no reward, just you and your conscience, do you hold to your principles? It's one of the truest measures of character. We all like to believe we would act rightly even in the dark, but it's worth examining ourselves truthfully. If there's any doubt, that's not a sign to despair. It's a sign to grow. By recognizing how situational forces can sway us, we can prepare ourselves. As Seneca wrote, "Constant misfortune brings this one blessing, to whom it always assails, it eventually fortifies." Every challenge, every moral test can forge our character stronger if we stay mindful. We can practice doing the right thing when it's hard, so that when it's really hard, we're ready. After witnessing how easily good people can be led to evil, Zimbardo asked an important follow-up. What can we do about it? Is there an antidote to the Lucifer effect? His answer? Find the hero within. In later years, Zimbardo shifted his focus to studying heroism as the flip side of the coin. He believes that just as we all have the capacity for evil, we all have the capacity to act heroically. In fact, Zimbardo stated, heroism is the antidote to evil. By promoting what he calls the heroic imagination, we encourage people, especially the young, to think of themselves as heroes in waiting, ready to do the right thing when the moment calls. In practical terms, that means training ourselves to stand up against wrongdoing, to help others, and to defend moral principles even when it's risky or unpopular. Heroism isn't about having superpowers or a special destiny. It's about choosing to act when it matters. This idea resonates with the mythologist Joseph Campbell's famous concept of the hero's journey. In Campbell's framework, every hero must leave their comfort zone, face trials, descend into a dark place, often a cave or abyss, and confront the shadow, both in the world and in themselves, before emerging transformed. Campbell beautifully said, "It is by going down into the abyss that we recover the treasures of life. Where you stumble, there lies your treasure." In other words, when we bravely enter the dark, the fears, the moral challenges, the unknown parts of ourselves, we often find our greatest growth, our treasure, waiting there. The abyss can be any challenge or confrontation with evil, whether it's battling injustice in society or facing your own inner demons. It's the moment a person decides to become the hero of their own story. Think of it this way. Each of us is the protagonist in our life's movie. We will all encounter obstacles, maybe even our share of evil. In those moments, we essentially stand at a crossroads, much like a scene from a story. One path tempts us to be the villain, or at least a bystander, and the other calls us to be the hero. This is our personal hero's journey. Psychologist Philip Zimbardo and mythologist Joseph Campbell are, in a sense, talking about the same thing. Confronting darkness as a path to transformation. Zimbardo provides the real-world evidence that ordinary people can indeed become villains or heroes, and Campbell provides the narrative template that shows how heroes are made. They go into the cave, they face the dragon, which could be external evil or their own shadow, and they come out wiser and stronger. So when life presents you with moral choices, big or small, remember that every moment offers a choice. Will you be a villain, a bystander, or a hero? Will you take the easier, darker path of least resistance, or the courageous path of integrity? It might help to remember that a hero isn't someone without fear or flaws. On the contrary, a hero is acutely aware of their fears and flaws, their shadow, and yet chooses to act for good anyway. Embracing our potential for heroism means acknowledging our inner darkness, but refusing to let it define us. Through understanding the Lucifer effect, we've learned a powerful truth. Awareness and conscious choice are our greatest weapons against darkness. Awareness means recognizing that the line between good and evil is not drawn between us and them, it runs within each of us. By becoming aware of our shadow, as Jung advised, we can keep it in check rather than denying it and letting it ambush us. Jungians teach that we must acknowledge our shadow without being controlled by it. Such moral awareness demands considerable effort, which prevents a descent into that darkness. In practice, that might mean regularly reflecting on our motives, confronting our prejudices, and being honest about the temptations we face. When we shine a light on our own potential for wrong, it loses much of its power to unconsciously drive us. Conscious choice, on the other hand, is about using our free will to uphold our values, especially when circumstances push us the other way. We've seen how Stoicism emphasizes focusing on what we can control, our own mind and actions. We can take this ancient wisdom and apply it today, every day. For example, when you feel peer pressure or anger surging, your situation trying to control you, pause and remember Marcus Aurelius' advice. You control your mind, nothing more. Choose your response deliberately instead of reacting blindly. Viktor Frankl's life taught us that meaning can be a lifeline in dark times. If we keep sight of our deeper purpose and values, we can endure and overcome almost anything. And modern psychology reinforces this. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi found that those who take charge of their inner life, who gain mastery over what happens in consciousness, lead richer and more resilient lives we decide in advance to be guided by our principles. We are less likely to lose our way when tested. So, how can we fortify our resilience and moral clarity in everyday life? Here are a few guiding practices inspired by Stoicism and Jungian psychology. Daily reflection. Take a few minutes each day to examine your actions and motives. Ask yourself, what did I do today that I'm proud of? What could I do better? This Stoic practice, endorsed by Seneca and others, builds self-awareness and course-corrects your moral compass regularly. Mindfulness of the moment. When you face a tough situation, practice that Stoic pause. Remember that while you can't always control events, you can control how you interpret and respond to them. This mindset turns challenges into opportunities to act with virtue rather than react with fear or anger. Shadow work. Don't ignore your darker impulses. Understand them. If you notice envy, cruelty, or prejudice in yourself, don't just push it away. Ask, why is this here? What does it feel like? By acknowledging these feelings without acting on them, you integrate your shadow rather than letting it ambush you. As Jung noted, integration of the shadow leads to a stronger, wiser self. Heroic imagination. Cultivate the self-image of a hero in waiting, as Zimbardo suggests. This doesn't mean being grandiose. It means mentally rehearsing doing the right thing. Imagine how you would intervene if someone were being bullied, or how you'd resist an unethical order at work. By visualizing these scenarios, you prepare your mind to act heroically when real situations arise. Find meaning in morality. Finally, give yourself a compelling why. Why do you want to be good? Perhaps it's spiritual belief, love for humanity, or simply knowing you'll respect yourself more. As Frankl discovered, having a clear purpose or meaning can carry you through the darkest of times. Let your values drive you, and you'll find strength even when standing alone against wrongdoing. In the end, the capacity for darkness resides in all of us, but so too does the potential for extraordinary heroism. The choice is always ours. Every decision, big or small, is a chance to turn towards the better angels of our nature. Zimbardo's research showed us how easily we can slip into cruelty, but it also indirectly shines light on the opposite, the profound impact of courageous, compassionate choices. Remember Zimbardo's insight that the human mind has an infinite capacity to be kind or cruel, creative or destructive, a villain or a hero. That means no matter what we've done before, we can always choose a different path next time. We can learn, grow, and redeem. Call to action. Now, take a moment to reflect on your own life. Can you recall a time when you were tested morally? How did the situation influence you, and how did your mindset guide your response? We encourage you to share your thoughts or stories in the comments below. By talking about these experiences, we can support each other in becoming more aware and morally resilient. Let's foster a community of introspective discussion where we learn from each other's victories and mistakes. After all, understanding ourselves is a journey, and we're all on it together. Thank you for watching and engaging in this deep reflection. Remember, every day is an opportunity to practice awareness, to make conscious choices, and maybe to be a hero, even in a small way. Stay thoughtful, stay courageous, and until next time, choose the good.